Uh, Greetings, everyone, and a warm welcome to our webinar on enhancing youth participation in local government in South Africa. My name is Jabu Hlachwayo, and I am a researcher at PARI working on a compact project. And I am honored today to be serving as your facilitator for today's session. So, because we started a bit late, without further ado, I would like to just invite Miss Winnie Manganye, who's the Compact Program Lead for the Sahauga side, to offer us a bit of a welcome and opening remarks. Without any wasting of time, Mrs. Manganye, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jabu, for the kind words. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Acknowledging and observing all protocol. My name is Winnie Manganye. I work for the South African Local Government Association, as Jabu indicated. I am the project manager for the Compact project from SALGA's side. Just a snippet, Compact is a project that is implemented by the three partners. Hence, you have PARI, which is the lead organization in the project, SALGA, and Integrity Action. This project has been implemented since 2022 in 12 municipalities. I think my colleague Consilia is going to talk more about that, what the project seeks to achieve, and where is the project implemented in those 12 municipalities in 6 provinces. My task today is a very easy task. It's just to welcome you all on this very important day, where particularly I would like to welcome the presence of the municipal councillors and the officials, senior officials, the civil society that is in our presence, SALGA representatives from national and provincial offices, PARI, Integrity Action, and all the speakers of the day, including our VIPs today, which is the young people of South Africa. We really thank the young, generation for showing interest in this very important engagement today. And I think I should take it upon myself to remind us all for why youth participation matters. Youth participation in local government is very important for ensuring a more representative and responsive democracy, empowering young people, and also fostering a sense of ownership within their communities. So you are a very important stakeholder in our municipality. You are the future of South Africa. Without you, there is absolutely no South Africa. And you assist in bridging generational divides. So your participation helps bridge generational divides and promotes a more cohesive community by fostering understanding and cooperation between different age groups. And when you as young people are involved in decision-making of the municipality, those municipalities are likely to, you are also likely to feel ownership and responsibility for your community, which leads to a better outcome and improved services. And also your participation, it promotes positive civic action, helping our young people learn about their rights and their responsibilities. So without wasting time, because we've already started late, today's engagement, I would like to highlight that it is organized and facilitated by young people. As you can see that Jabu will be facilitating the process, and Consilia will be saying quite a lot in terms of what Compact is and it seeks to achieve. So as Compact, we really are committed to youth empowerment. This commitment can be seen, we have stolen a slogan that is coming from another sector, which is the disability sector, which says nothing about us without us. Hence, we decided that we are not going to lead the session. Jabu and Consilia are going to lead the session. So colleagues, in closing, I would like to say, please feel free to ask as many questions as you can using the chats. And also make comments. We would like to hear your voice. And with that, I would like to say, Jabu, thank you very much. You are all welcome. Over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Manganye, for those insightful opening remarks. Nothing for us without us. Uh, Next, we'll have a presentation by Consilia Choma, who's from Salga and also working for Compact. The title of the presentation is Empowering Youth in Local Government, Challenges and Opportunities. So essentially, Consilia here will be reflecting on some of the challenges that are faced by the youth in local government and some of the opportunities that exist in their empowerment. So please welcome in joining and welcoming me. Sorry, not me, but Consilia to the presentation. Thank you very much. Consilia, please take it away.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Siswini for the warm welcome. Colleagues, my name is Consilia Choma. I'm a researcher for Compact from Salga's site. My apologies for the cracked voice. I just woke up with, I think it's flu that I'm just catching this morning. So apologies. I hope my voice will carry me throughout the presentation. I'm excited to be a part of this important conversation as we explore how we can turn youth from passive observers into active agents in the local governance. Colleagues, what we are doing here today, or what we are having here, is more than a conversation. It's about power, about voices, and about our future. So I will be giving a brief background on what Compact is. Hey, Kate, I hope I'm not too quick for you. We can move to the next slide that speaks to what Compact is. So for those of us who are not familiar with the Compact program, I will bless you with a brief background of our journey so far. So Compact stands for Community Pact. It's the word com refers to community and the pact to the stakeholder relationships. And it's not just a name, it's a commitment. It's a collaboration between PARI, SALGA, and Integrity Action. This initiative is working across 12 municipalities to enhance accountability through public participation, especially during the integrated development planning, which is known as the IDP or IDP process. The Compact project brings together community voices and government stakeholders. I'm going to now show you the municipalities that we are working with, which are 12 in number in 6 provinces that Compact is taking place. So we have 2 municipalities per province, as I've indicated, namely, we have Machabeng and Zwelopili in the Free State, we have Newcastle and Umhlatuze in KZN, we have Moses Kotane and JB Max in the Northwest, and we have Oudtshoorn and Witzenberg in the Western Cape. We have Kucha and Blue Crane in Eastern Cape, as well as Solblaki and Mthanjeni in the Northern Cape. Next slide, please. We didn't make assumptions, colleagues, we asked. Because the Compact initiative is grounded in action research, which was conducted in 2 key phases, where phase 1 involved interviews and focus groups, with municipal officials, elected representatives, and ward committee members, while our phase 2 focused on citizen engagement workshops. And we brought together community leaders, civil society organizations, as well as community-based organizations and ward committee members. This process of research resulted in 12 individual municipal reports, each tailored to the specific municipality as indicated on the list of municipalities that we have, as well as a consolidated technical findings report that synthesized the insights and recommendations across all participating municipalities. The consolidated report was published in November 2025, and the findings from this action report now inform the development of the Compact Toolbox, which is a set of practical tools that we are currently producing and piloting with municipalities. The toolbox includes resources for citizen-based monitoring, collaborative governance, ward committee support, and civic education. Next slide, please, Kate, on the research findings. So the findings and recommendations from the action research are categorized under 6 thematic areas, which is the IDP public participation process, the ward committees, the communication between the municipalities and their communities, the operational planning of the municipalities, the performance management within our municipalities, as well as the political administrative interface. Now, I'll just give a brief overview of what came out with regards to youth participation. So the in-depth reviews, the in-depth interviews that we conducted and the workshops and the citizen dialogues revealed a major gap between local government intentions and how young people actually experience participation. The findings, as you can see on the presentation before you, indicates that the youth are not apathetic. They are instead skeptical, and that it also indicates that participation is tied to tangible outcomes, especially jobs, given the youth unemployment rate in our country. As one respondent puts it, I quote, they come when there is something about projects. So, ladies and gentlemen, that what we see here is not disinterest, it's survival. And the big question here is, what is in it for us if our interests are not adequately represented? This is the big question that came out from what the youth were sharing. And another thing that came out is that the youth feel they are being talked down. I did include the quotes there on the presentation. And another quote suggests that councillors were admitting that they need to listen better to the youth, because the engagements cannot be condescending. It must instead be empowering. Still, the picture painted here isn't all doom and gloom, as some municipalities do demonstrate good practice by involving youth in the IDP and other municipal processes, such as engaging with high school learners or working through youth councils to reach out to the youth. This is my last slide on the findings on youth participation. So what we see here is that many young people feel disconnected from ward committees and integrated development planning forums. they view these processes as outdated, irrelevant, and frankly boring. So here we are just being frank as to how most of the youth participants, such as the ones found in our ward committees or other citizen-based organizations, have expressed their views that these processes are outdated, are irrelevant, and are frankly boring. However, there are glimpses of potential that emerge through social media opportunities that could transform municipal forums into genuine spaces for change. So what we came across from the data that we collected on this topic of youth participation, what came out was that social media has the potential of helping resolve these youth participation issues if it is taken not just as a platform, but used or embraced as a language. There are participants that were saying meeting the youth where they are means engaging them on these digital stages, but not merely with municipal notices, as is the case in most municipalities now. And what we deduced from the recommendations is that digital democracy is real and municipalities need to embrace it. I'm going to give an example, a real-time or real-life example of something that happened in May 2024 on the South African streets of TikTok. So there were TikTok influencers that were able to successfully mobilize young voters, significantly boosting voter registration among the youth using social media, using the TikTok platform to be precise. So this is one great example of civic education tailored for the Gen Zs, because youth crave memes, they crave reels, they crave polls, not just PDFs and press releases. Colleagues, I would put this to us that let's imagine IDP processes streamed live on TikTok using this example that I've just given. And now I will just dive into the purpose of the webinar, why we are here today. So the primary aim of this seminar is to explore the existing tools and programs designed to enhance youth participation in municipal governance and to initiate a meaningful dialogue on this critical issue, keeping in mind what I have just alluded to, which are findings that came from the ground through our research. And by bringing together the stakeholders from the various sectors, we seek to identify effective strategies and good practices that can be implemented to foster greater youth involvement in local decision-making processes. The guiding questions for today's conversation here on the slide: what factors influence the participation of young people in local government elections, municipal planning, implementation, and oversight? And what are some of the trends that we see in youth participation from recent election cycles? And what is the role of the civic education programs in ensuring participation by the youth in municipalities? What strategies, tools, and resources are being implemented to increase youth participation? And lastly, what are the opportunities and challenges in using social media to increase participation in municipal affairs? And I am quite confident that most of our speakers today will be answering to these questions. And through this discussion, we can be able to develop actionable insights and collaborative approaches that can be adopted to inform inclusive and participatory municipal governance. So on the last slide, this is basically the conduct details or information of the compact program, how you can get a hold of us. And we do have several fact sheets that are available on our website. So everyone that's in the meeting would be encouraged to pop in there after the seminar or whenever you have time, just to acclimatize yourself more with what this program has been doing and it's about. So now I would just to sum up my presentation, let me first thank everyone for showing up and say to us, let's build a new culture of local democracy, a culture where youth shape the decisions that shape their lives. And I'm excited to introduce the Youth Council from the Oudtshoorn local municipality. They will be reflecting on the youth engagements and participatory initiatives that they are involved in through their municipalities' public participation unit. So their case will be providing us with a real-time scenario of young people shaping local governance from within. Without any further ado, let me just introduce the chief who will be taking on from where I'm living now, where I'm leaving it. I'm trying to abstain from butchering his name. So I'll just hand over to him. He will introduce himself properly and take it from here, take us through the reflections. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, colleagues. Also, in Youth Council, please take it away. The platform is yours, Chief. Thank you.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, we can, Chief. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. I firstly want to say a good morning to our host and everyone on the panel in your roles in this regard. Thank you very much. My name is Desiderius Klaasen, and I'm currently the chairperson of the Greater Oudtshoorn Youth Council. And with me is executive members of this youth council. We are very excited to have this platform to where we can really voice our concerns as well as what we are doing in Oudtshoorn in the small Volksstreekskar. Okay. Firstly, the Greater Oudtshoorn Youth Council is a youth council that is not political. So we are not a political affiliated organization, but it is youth members from all 13 wards. So we are 26 members from the 13 wards of Oudtshoorn that really volunteer our time and efforts to ensure that the youth in Oudtshoorn they are being taken care of in terms of youth development and in terms of how we can enhance our youth. So we volunteer our time on a daily basis. At this moment, we have programs that assist our youth, but I want to start by saying the youth morale is very low. So the youth believe that everything when it comes to municipality is just a talk show. So we have a battle to get youth interested in our programs. And we also have a battle to ensure that youth do attend our programs because they believe it is just a talk show when it comes to municipality. One of our success stories is we have a safe space program. It is where on a Friday, we have in our different wards, we have programs where we take the youth from the streets or try to keep them from the streets to be at one central venue where we can then educate them. We have different teams where we can educate them in terms of what they need to know. As I said before, their morale is very low at the moment. Yes, we have that safe space is our success story, where we try to get youth back in believing in a better South Africa, in a better tomorrow. In this safe space, our focus is, of course, let them enjoy themselves in a safe space, but also to educate them. As we believe our youth is not that much educated in terms of public participation, or they don't know how they can influence processes or how they can influence the way the municipality acts when they have queries or stuff. So we try to educate them. One of our success stories also is we have a program where we call it the rural outreach, where we try to take services to our rural areas. Services such as our health services, services such as Department of Social Development. And so we try to take these services through this platform to the rural areas. We also had a program where we realized most of our youth, they don't have access to the internet. So when they want to apply for jobs or when they want to apply for bursaries or any other tertiary education centers, they don't have access to data. So what we then do is we go into our rural areas and we then assist them to apply. So that is also one of the success stories, and many of them who applied, they got jobs or they got into educational centers through that program we had. One of our obstacles or constraints at the moment is we call it a lack of buy-in from our local government. At this stage, all our programs and all our initiatives is funded by ourselves. Most, about 80–90% of us are unemployed, but when we have programs or we try to have initiatives like this, we fund it ourselves. So at this moment, we have that funding or financial backing obstacle or barrier. That's one of our barriers. When we look at solutions, as I said, the low morale of our youth at the moment, we look at solutions is we need educational workshops in terms of what the different government spheres are supposed to do. Because we've realized when it comes to IDP meetings, everyone is fighting about housing or fighting about unemployment. But our youth have a lack of understanding as to which government sphere is supposed to do what or who is responsible for what. So we try to have like those education. We believe if we can educate our youth, they can interact better. We also believe as the Youth Council that we don't fight with, we don't fight with stones, but we rather educate ourselves so that we can have these kind of discussions around the table and voice our concerns in a professional and as well as a well manner. So that is one of the platforms we try to do, educate in terms of policies. Let us youth understand what are the different policies in our municipality, what are the different laws or bylaws, how local government act and stuff. So we try to educate them in terms of these policies, laws, so that they can interact better and understand, have a better understanding. Yes, and then one of the other ideas is in our municipality, I saw somewhere they said in the presentation previously, there is a kind of partnership between local youth councils and municipality. At this moment, we don't have that kind of relationship. And we believe that's exactly what angers our youth. Because when it comes to youth, the IDP processes, they already have a predetermined plan. But public participation at this stage, as the youth believe, is just a show. So people just come and they ask, what do you need? But at the end of the day, next year, they come with the same points and nothing has been done. So the youth believe that it is just a show, it is just a plan, it is just a due process. But especially when it comes to the IDP, if we can include the youth from the start, and then when the youth feel like now we are consultative forum, they will react better. For now, it is just the youth are only included when it's the IDP process in the wards, but from the start off, they were never asked to be like a consultative forum or what do you need. So the youth feel like they are neglected. The youth feel like no one wants to listen to them, but people want to decide on their behalf. So for us to get our youth more interested again in terms of local government processes and local government programs, we really need to prove to them that we are just not having this kind of platforms, but we are doing something that is an outcome. We need to have outcome-based programs, outcome-based projects, so that our youth feel appreciated again. So we believe if the youth council in all other youth in other areas can be seen as a consultative forum, especially with the IDP budget process, all other processes, then when we start to move into that direction, we will have a better impact. Our youth will feel, they will have a better morale, they will feel more appreciated, they will feel more accountable. For instance, if you, for now, what the municipality does or is local government does is they decide for the youth. So you decide to start to have a program in the ward, but the program does not speak to what the youth wants. And what the youth then do is it's like they rebel. They are rebellion towards that. And then it seems like the youth are uninterested. It's not like they are uninterested, it's just like they were never consulted. So if we can move into that direction of not just deciding for the youth, but allowing the youth to be their own voice. Because if you are 50, 60 years old, it's impossible to know how a 18 or 17-year-old person thinks or what they want or their state of mind. And that's one of the remedies for the low morale of our youth. Lastly, we believe at that stage, the youth are at a point where they don't even want to vote. Because they believe they are only important when it comes to voting. Like I said before, we are not a political organization. We are just there for youth empowerment. But in politics is one of the constraint or one of the barriers. People don't want to vote. They're not interested. And that's the youth. But if our youth are not interested in changing our country, we have a problem. Because if they don't want to vote, they will use other manners and they will use other ways to be a voice. So what I'm saying is the youth have a responsibility to be their own voice, but forums like this needs to be more readily available. Like today, we were supposed to have a full hall where people can hear that what happens in other platforms or what happens in other societies or what happens in other municipalities. Because the youth, like I said, feel like they are not being heard. But if they can be part of this, especially our rural areas, I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief, rather. Sorry for that. And those are very valuable insights. And I'm seeing a lot of traffic or traction in the chat box. Please do keep it up. There will come a time where we'll have a discussion on these issues. And also thank you for Consilia for the comprehensive presentation. But now we'll move forward to our panel discussion. So for the topic of this session, exploring different tools and programs to improve youth participation in municipalities. So we're very fortunate to have with us very dignified and a very interesting bunch of of panels, or rather panelists in our midst. So I'm just going to give you a bit of naming, not bio or anything extensive, so that at least we can, move on with the presentations. So we would have Janet Love, followed by Mr. Angelo Fick, Spelelo Ngobese, and finally we would have a discussion or panel rather by Paul Plattinger. Without saying a lot, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Janet Love, who is the Vice Chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa. She has held the position since 2018. She has a very long history in public service, including roles in as a part-time commissioner of the South African Human Rights Commission, and she was the national director of the Legal Resource Center. With that being said, uh, Ms. Love, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you very much to Perry and Compact and Salga for putting this together. I don't want to take up a lot of time with presentations, so I am going to run through the slides quite quickly. There are really three areas that the slide addresses. The first is the issue of participation of youth in elections, and there are a couple of things that I just want to highlight there, not that this is going to be contradicting what's already been said or that it's necessarily going to be a surprise. The second is to go through what the IEC currently does in relation to its own outreach program, the understanding that the whole arena of civic education, democracy education is clearly a societal responsibility. It's not just a responsibility of one institution. And then thirdly, just to look at issues about participation of youth in government. I'll end not so much in terms of the slides, but just to pick up on some of the issues that have been raised about participation and about accountability. Okay, so we can go quickly through the first couple of slides. They're just really introductions, and I've gone through them. And if we just go to slide 3, next slide. Okay, so what's critical about, no, sorry, go one, please, Kate. What's critical about it is just to get a sense of the numbers. If you look at the bullet that, if we're looking at the 63.2 million people in South Africa, over 60% are youth. So that's a sort of framing, I think, not just for the conversation that's being had today, but for the conversation about the advocacy that I think is necessary, and I'll come to that at the end, for purposes of really trying to get things to improve. If we can go to the next slide, you'll see that this is what the data says. Okay, so the data is kind of looking that we're dealing with moments in time. We're looking at the data in terms of who has registered for local government elections. And you'll see that obviously the last local government election was 2021. So we need to look at what did we take from 2021, where we could see that in a decrease in the registration of youth. Go to the next slide, please. The next slide is going to show you that not only in terms of registration, but in addition to that, if you get to local government elections 2021, the participation of youth to actually turn up to vote was also less. And by the way, when we talk about youth, we're using the kind of global definition of up to 35. So again, if you go to the next slide, this is the critical slide that I really, from point of view of participation, that I wanted to really hone in on. Because if you look at what I've just said in terms of what we saw in LGE 2021, local government elections of 2021, obviously we really did a lot to up the number of young people who were registered. And the percentage growth of registration in terms of the voters' roll from 2021 to 2024 was over 226%. So what I'm saying is there was an incredibly focused effort, not just by the Commission, but by the Commission working with youth organizations, working with tertiary institutions to get the registration numbers up. Registration does not speak to turnout. So notwithstanding the fact that registration went up by over 225%, the actual turnout of young people was still down in local government elections, down from 71% when it comes to the ages of 18 to 19, 45. Down from 20 to 29, well, that was slightly up, 35 to 48, and slightly up from 30 to 39. The point that I'm raising there is that the increase overall of voter registration growth is not matched by turnout. Okay, point made. If we move to the next slide, I think then we need to just, I just wanted to run through a number of programs that the Commission runs. And within a year, the Commission literally conducts thousands of engagements throughout the country. Obviously, it's not in every single school or in every single municipality every month of the year. There are these engagements that are tertiary institution, schools, and there are different activities that are carried out in each. There's our digital media campaign, and then there is also the person-to-person outreach that goes on in communities, sometimes with particular sectors like the disability sector, sometimes looking at people who are really in shopping malls and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of overall spread of the youth campaigns. And it would be, I think, really important for us to get some suggestions of how young people can feed into those. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so social media campaigns, that's the kind of profiling of the social media interaction. You can go on. I mean, it's clearly an area where young people do participate. You can move to the next slide. But obviously, I think in the country, the important thing about social media, and it has been mentioned by the colleagues from Oudtshoorn, it's a very important platform, but clearly quality and availability cost of bandwidth are very, very critical. So if we look at then the representation of youth in government, you'll see that at the moment, we've got 3%, the members of parliament that are from 20 to 29, 16% between 30 and 39. Clearly, well below 60% grouping. Similarly, if you look at 20 to 39 in municipal councils, we're talking about 31%. So there is a huge opportunity on the one hand, but also, I think, a huge deficit that we need to figure out how this can be rectified. These are the kind of key issues that the data that we have, because that's really what I wanted to present. And as I say, this presentation will be made available so that people can engage the data in more detail. But what I think is important, and it's really something that goes to the heart of what the conversation is today, is this does not really deal with issues of accountability and enhancing participation. We all know, and I think it's clear from the reports that have been tabled already, particularly those from the three presenters before me, that everybody here knows that participation in democracy is something that is, it takes effort. It's a difficult process. It's a time-consuming process. And it takes the kind of commitment that sometimes, because many of the processes of government have not delivered in the way in which people expected them to, that kind of energy, that kind of commitment is in deficit. So how can we change that? I think that some of the suggestions about ensuring that we have a much better understanding that is developed amongst younger people of how these processes work, that is clearly critical. And it seems to me that part of what we need to mobilize for is what was said in the chat box, by the way. I think they're very helpful suggestions that are coming through and could come through. And that is that ward committees really need to have a quota of young people, because ward committees, the amounts that are set aside for ward committees in the law is not substantial. But it is something that young people could benefit from and would certainly then have a much greater leverage in terms of their voice being heard. So I think there's real room for advocating that ward committees actually do have a quota of youth. Secondly, that the issue about IDP processes, there really needs to be a motivation coming, I would suggest, very strongly from SALGA, that the whole IDP process is revisited on an ongoing basis through various platforms, not just in terms of social media, but also in terms of actual available in poster forms. Where are we with the IDP processes, and which young people have entered those processes, which stage? And that needs to be a reporting moment, I think, for an IDP process. And again, it's something that can be strengthened by both the amendment of primary, but also even of the regulations. The last thing that I did want to say is that I don't think that it is, for whatever, not wanting to get into ideologies and politics, that's certainly not my role. But the reality is, we all know that South Africa is not a communist state. So as a consequence of that, it's really unrealistic for us to expect the state to provide all the jobs. Having said that, there are really a lot of areas for job creation that are being for people to be able to create their own opportunities for employment, for people who do have informal and small-scale employment and are part of small companies, non-profit institutions even, to have much greater assistance. And it seems to me particularly co-ops is an area in our country which is supposed to be driven at the municipal level, and that is really inadequate. So I think there's room for people, and I know that you all have got limitations in terms of budget, but in terms of Compact, Parry, Salga, and other institutions, to really be focusing on what are those measures within the scope of local government that could improve the chances of young people to do what they can do, what they're completely capable of doing, in terms of own employment activity. Thanks very much, and I'm sorry again for the delay in the presentation. Thank you, Kate, for flighting.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Janet, for the comprehensive presentation. I would just like to know from your side if you be part of the Q&A session, or you still have another engagement that you need to run to.
My apologies to all of you. I am at the moment at an engagement, which I'm happy to say there's a really good presence of young people about the electoral reform process. So I do need to return. And as I say, my presentation is available, and the Commission and its website is available. If there are any questions, I'm happy to engage in those through email form. Thank you. Thanks to everybody, and really thanks for a great initiative.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So for anyone who want to be in contact with Ms. Janet Love, who would just be, I think the email will be in the chat box. Please take it away. Would you like a bio for yourself, or will you just
No. I'll introduce my organization, because that's
Thank
basically
you.
what I'm here to represent.
Right. Thank you.
Okay,
No problem.
so my name is Angelo Fick. I'm Director of Research at the OWL Socioeconomic Research Institute. What I'll do is put my organization's website into the chat section so that people can go and check the program that I'm talking about that way. So I don't have a presentation to share, but I will speak about the program. So we run an oversight and accountability program in municipalities geared at young people under the age of 35. And in that program, which we have run in 6 physical municipalities and 1 online session, because we didn't have enough uptake for one of the provinces, we do some work. So the 6 municipalities that we've worked in, and they overlap with some of the material that has been outlined before about compacts work. We've worked in Johannesburg, Tshwane, Bombela, Salt Lake Municipality, which is the old Kimberley. We've worked in JB Marks, which is the old Potchefstroom. We did an online seminar with people in the Free State, and that included people from the Zamdela region, and that was all of last year. What we intend to do in this year is to follow up with additional training in other municipalities, but also ongoing work with the existing municipalities. So our program is a 3-day program that we pay for and participants can attend for free. We do not charge them anything. We provide the venue, we provide meals and snacks and tea for the days of training. My colleague Zona Boniswa and I, and previously my other colleague Mohammed Kaji and I did the training. We divided it into 2 components. I did material on what are the legal structures through which oversight can be exercised at municipal level, but beyond that also the internal mechanisms for oversight inside government between the 3 tiers of government and across the 3 spheres of government. So between local, provincial, and national government, and also then between the executive of government, the legislative arm of government, and the judicial arm of government. The idea was to give young people a very concrete idea and understanding of the structure of the South African state, which technically enables them to oversee government function, to give, shall we say, action to the constitutional principle of accountability, as well as transparency, and consultative government. We focused on young people because, 1, we felt that there are several other in-service professionals over 30 and into their 40s, run by organizations like SALGA and by others. And because the majority of South Africa's population is now actually younger than the country itself, it's 27 and younger, we're 31 years old as a democracy, we felt it was important to access younger people in order for them also to reinvest in the formal politics of this country from which many of them have been so alienated. In the first day of the program, I do my work specifically on the legal and other structures that allow for accountability. On the second and third day, my colleagues run a project management component in which we introduce the participants to using project management to use in the Section 79 committees in municipalities to exercise oversight. And part of that means engendering a project that is made by the local participants in each of those municipalities on issues or interests that are the focus for them. So in one of the municipalities, Johannesburg, the focus was on sanitation and hygiene in the city centre around a taxi rank and a transport interchange. In another municipality, it was about access to and use of municipal clinics, because of our metros that have municipal clinics that belong to the city rather than to the provincial health department. Zona Boniswa runs that project, and the participants then design what they want to do by way of oversight. They meet on a regular basis, facilitated by ASRI, to work out strategies for how they're going to access either the Section 79 committee for the legislature to exercise oversight onto the executive, while they may also be talking to the executive to facilitate citizen oversight on the executive arm of government. And so they're learning about the separation of powers and also how they can exercise oversight on both arms of that level of government. We obviously don't have at this point any push towards any kind of litigation against government because one, it's expensive, two, it isn't always as effective as one imagines it to be. And younger people, I think, want to see more immediate positive feedback on their actions, and therefore their participation in those oversight processes are quite useful. So ours is an advocacy, agitation, and education program, runs for 3 days. And there is a project component that runs for 3 to 6 months after, so that we don't just come in, do the training and leave, but we guide the people in the program towards using their own embodied selves to exercise oversight and therefore to participate in democratic processes. The idea is to build a municipal accountability network so that people across municipalities can learn from one another, and then to construct an online platform through which people who haven't necessarily been through the training can also access the ways in which municipal oversight can be exercised. We have not explored all of the provinces because there are resource constraints. We're a donor-funded organization, but there have also been safety concerns because we've had participants indicate to us that they have had intimidation, if not outright threats, in some of the municipalities when they've approached the municipality for very basic legally mandated oversight materials. And so we are also quite aware of the very difficult environment within which this happens, and always put the lives of our participants first and their safety, rather than to just go in and gung-ho suggest that there are going to be oversight processes when we hear from participants that they run risks. And so what we design the projects around is also what people want, but also in relation to their safety concerns. I will now put the ASRI Oversight and Accountability website link into the chat that people, it's a very simple link. People can also just write it down from that chat or copy and paste it. And then I will take questions after the panel presentations are finished. So thank you so much to Pari and to everybody for allowing ASRI to present its program.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angelo. Thank you very much. I'm sure there's a lot of questions pertaining to oversight and accountability in municipalities. So I'd like to move on to the third panelist or the third speaker. I'm not sure, Spelele, if you're ready to take on this task. Spelele is a researcher in the Inclusive Cities program at the South African Cities Network. So her work focuses on urban safety, inclusion, and well-being, and also coordinating the South African Cities Urban Safety Reference Group and producing the annual State of Urban Safety in South Africa, a report essentially. I'm sure she'll dive in on her work as she starts clarifying her role and how it ties into youth participation. If you're there, Lele, please take the stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jobu, for that wonderful introduction. I won't spend any more time kind of going through the work. I think you've done a great job of articulating what it is that I do. There's just one other element to that work. So you did mention that I work in the Inclusive Cities program of the SACN. It has quite a strong thrust into the built environment integration, looking at, of course, the built environment, spatial transformation, the integration of the built environment with transport and other public goods. It also has quite a strong engagement with urban safety, the idea that safety, violence, and crime are developmental issues. And then there's a third sub-programmatic focus, which looks at urban youth strategies. So in that sense, I feel like a lot of the speakers that preceded me have said it all, and they've really highlighted the different connections to youth engagement. But perhaps let me just trace the journey of how SACN has approached the area of youth or the thematic work around youth. So in 2016, when we were initiating a new 5-year program post the issue of our, 5-yearly report called the State of South African Cities Report, we identified a need to start engaging quite deeply with the issue of the right to the city, particularly for vulnerable groups. We focused in on youth, recognizing quite a lot of the challenges, but also the potentials and opportunities that exist within the sector. I think my preceding speakers have already mentioned how young people increasingly the majority of our urban population, Africa being a really young continent as well. Young people involved in a lot of discussions, but their voice not being taken seriously. So really identifying a gap in youth voice and the potential for youth contribution to influence our processes, to understand local government better. And at the same time, we as SACN were and are the Secretariat for the Integrated Urban Development Framework, which is our national urban policy that clarifies really and recommits to the object of local government, to the role of local government in driving sustainable development, being where a large majority of our populations live. Increasingly, by 2050, it's projected that about 60 to 70% of our national populations will be living in cities, correlated with the fact that we've already mentioned that our demographics are changing and youth are the majority population. So the IUDF, or the Integrated Urban Development Framework, has 8 levers. Lever 7 speaks to active and engaged communities. So we correlated this issue with what we had identified around the need to amplify youth voice, the need to leverage the mandate of local government, because local government is tasked with driving democratic participation using various means, including IDP processes, and saying, how do you enable usually marginalized groups, such as youth, through this policy priority to create active or enable active and engaged communities. So then started our engagement, and one other key pillar of our thinking was that we really wanted to move away from this event-based way of engaging with the issues that face young people and the challenges and also the opportunities that are encompassed within the youth demographic. So in 2016 and 2017, we began with film screenings just to litmus test and get a sense of what young people in cities were talking about, what they were concerned with, some of the key things that were their interests. And from there, we began to unearth that young people, of course, a lot of this has already been articulated, and I really appreciated the input from the Oudtshoorn Youth Council. I think they did a great job of articulating some of the things that young people face, and they were no different at the time as well. We encountered that young people felt that urban systems, local government systems were opaque, hard to navigate. They don't know how to navigate the system, who to call in regard of what, and how to tap into participatory processes. And that a lot of the participatory processes, it's been mentioned already, Concilia did a great encapsulation that sometimes, young people are talked at, so they were not tailored to respond directly to how young people should be engaged. And so we set out on a deep programmatic approach to amplifying youth voice, to clarifying what participation means and how young people can tap into processes of influencing and co-creating urban futures. And one of the components, so at first, following the film screenings and other, smaller interventions, we started with a half-day crash course on understanding local government systems. Out of the findings of that work, we followed that up with a workshop series where we invited youth-led organizations within communities in Gauteng, in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni mainly, through a process where we provided them with resourcing, similar to how Angelo have framed their support measures to young people, to say we'll provide the venue, we'll provide the expert facilitation and the know-how and the technical support to understand key concepts. And we will teach you about participatory action research as a way to identify problems in your community, identify opportunities in your community, identify the key stakeholders and the people you should have in the room to sort through problems in your community. So how to be a better and empowered participant in processes in your community. So that 6-week engagement culminated in a report that also taught us quite some insightful lessons around what young people were suggesting around interventions into space, into economy, and how we can cross-leverage space and the economy to enable young people to participate more meaningfully. And then from the findings of that work, we did more recently decide that pointed to the need to grow the capacity of local government to listen and to engage young people, and to also empower young people to be able to talk to systems in a constructive way, in a way that allows things to move ahead. And so we got into the process of developing a youth engagement toolkit geared at and targeting municipal officials, but people across the youth sector, really. And in some ways, it's preaching to the converted, but in a lot of ways, it really speaks to that gap in how to communicate with young people and how to engage youth in a tailored way that speaks to them, their sensibilities, where they are at, etc. And so the Youth Engagement Toolkit is something that we have, and we're very open to sharing that with you post this section. I can actually drop the link to that in the chat. But there were also some key insights that came out of the process of doing and creating that Youth Engagement Toolkit, because the format or the methodology of how we did it is that we engaged with youth across a couple of our cities who are members of the SACN, and really unearthing some of the key things they want to see happen in their cities. And through those engagements and then the findings of that toolkit, it's that young people have quite pointed recommendations around what should happen with urban space. Youth who are involved in the creative industries and the creative communities see opportunity in abandoned, urban properties. And there's an opportunity to really leverage city property companies, so your Joburg property company or the equivalent in any other city, to enable youth entrepreneurship in their spaces. And in response to this challenge of declining old CBDs, where, the new phenomenon in urban development is that CBDs are now dispersed. Cities have more than one CBD. What happens to all CBDs? There's still great potential in those spaces, and how they can be leveraged by cities given their mandate over space, their custodianship of the urban realm. How can they drive deep and meaningful inclusion of young people, especially given their big contribution to the creative economies, and how can they be enabled through local processes, local economic development, etc., to be able to do that. We also identified and are shifting into, this focus on streaming our youth work that we've done before into a more intentional focus on the areas of skilling, entrepreneurship, and employment. So recognizing that the current status of economic growth, which is rather slow and sluggish, means that it's not likely that a lot of young people are going to be absorbed into the mainstream economy and employment in the short to medium term. Therefore, there being a need, one, to capacitate young people in terms of skilling for the jobs of the future and for the current economy and for current local labor markets, but at the same time capacitating young people for entrepreneurship. So a greater focus on articulating the question of youth within the economic development frame of our work as SACN. And to also add that in our engagement with youth, we were quite conscious of the fact that, youth is not a monolith. There are young people across many categories, young people who are, families, who are parents, young people who are in training and education, young people who are not in training and education, young people who are still in school. That strata from 15 to 34 encompasses quite a lot of, different categories of young people. And how do you respond to that? And from where we sit, we thought it would be important to address the question of youth and the question of youth in cities and the question of youth influencing urban processes by engaging young people who are in education, who are scholars in urban development, architecture, spatial planning, etc., and then young people who are out of school but not involved in any training or employment currently, just to get a mixed sense of what's going on with young people. So in our engagements with young people in scholarship, the intent there was to say young people have quite a lot to contribute in terms of knowledge about cities as well. So how can we enable and capacitate young people to influence research? And so we ran a biennial, not biannual, biennial, once every 2 years, young planners and designers essay competition, where we called for entries in forms of essays, photo essays, videos, models, making suggestions and pointing to key questions about the trajectory of our urban development in South Africa. And from that, we got a lot of great insight that really made the point that young people are involved in complex thinking about our cities as well. And currently, we are just coming out of a process where we are partnering with the cubes at WITS within the School of Architecture and Planning to improve understanding of safety concepts. So Ujabu did mention in the beginning that my focus currently is on urban safety. But the question of safety, and I think it came up in Angelo's input as well, as something that young people are raising as quite a significant challenge. Our own research suggests that young people, especially young males, especially young Black males, are both, in terms of victimhood and also perpetratorship, they are right up there, higher than any other group. And so how do you begin to talk to young people about issues of safety, and how do you engage young people as key actors in your interventions about safety? And so we ran an innovation competition on youth-led GBV prevention in public spaces. So something that was very spatially targeted, and also calling on young or youth-led organizations within our communities across the country to come and receive some facilitated training around design thinking to improve their intervention so that they have greater connections to GBV prevention, how to orient young people around prevailing policy on an issue. So the National Strategic Plan on GBV and femicide became a key focus. How do you align your intervention to prevailing policy as well? And then there was training around design thinking, around project preparation, around project packaging, so that you can tap into various sources of funding for your intervention. And the key finding out of that was that young people are instrumental in GBV prevention. Young people are hungry to be involved and to enhance their interventions and to engage at community level to solve problems, and that young people need a bit of resourcing, because what that innovation competition did is that it gave a small grant to each intervention to kind of meet and plug some of the needs and the gaps in resourcing that they needed for their intervention to succeed. So whether they needed to kind of buy branding, buy a speaker, whether they are running, self-defense classes, etc. So equipment to enable their intervention to advance. So the finding was that young people need resourcing and support and capacitation to really enhance and maximize the impact of their contributions. And so that's the long and short of what we've done around youth engagement and how it responds to some of the questions and the framing that we received around the event. What factors influence youth participation? The quick one for me is that it's really just opportunity. I think it's already been said quite well previously that young people are open and willing to participate, but all they need is for that participation to be meaningful, not to be surface level, and not for them to just feel like they're being used as voting cattle and only engaged during Youth Month or when it's convenient. So the need to balance out invited spaces of participation with invented spaces of participation for young people, and what some of the trends are in I won't speak to the election cycles. I think Janet has done an excellent job of kind of framing that aspect. But the role of civic education, I think from our experience, which really zeroed in on the area of capacity building so that youth are active and empowered actors in local governance and in urban development and in thinking about our future cities, those kinds of interventions that are really geared at amplifying youth voice are instrumental. And it's quite inspiring to be in this particular space today to get a sense of that going on across various organizations within the sector, and also just perhaps to make the plea that for us to connect more and share and exchange our experiences and aggregate some of that data, and perhaps even collaborate around, what our common findings have been, so that we have a central way of understanding what's going on in the youth sector. In terms of strategies and tools and resources, I think I've spoken quite at length about the Youth Engagement Toolkit, perhaps as just one example of how we can build the capacity of systems to also listen, because it's really also about systems listening. It's about systems tailoring things that show and techniques for engagement that show that they think quite intently about young people and what it is that young people need and how young people want to be and should be engaged. And some of the key opportunities for me, I would say again, in the creative industries, there's a great opportunity there to really amplify youth participation in urban economies through the creative industries, through the creation of third spaces. So not work, not home, but really stimulating, young urban economies through various means that can be directly supported by local government within its mandate, within its custodianship of the urban realm, of urban space, and the urban economy in terms of, enabling employment and providing opportunities for skilling, etc. Let me stop there and not take much more of your time, but thank you for the opportunities. Thank you to Pari, thank you to Salga and all the partners in this process. And really, I think as a parting shot, just to say that we are very keen to partner on this and engage further and share and exchange on what we know. And hopefully we can come to something collaborative and incisive and impactful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salele. It's a pleasure. And again, as I say with the other presentations, a very insightful and comprehensive presentation. We're moving to our final panelist and our final presentation before we move to our interactive session of the day. And the last speaker would be Mr. Paul Plattinger, who is a senior research manager at the Human Centers Resource Council. So he leads projects on digital policy and e-participation platforms, which I think he will be speaking a lot on in this session, and evidence-based or informed policy making. And he has a background in ICT governance, innovation, and mobile telecommunications. But I'll leave the rest of his bio to to Paul himself. Thank you very much, Paul. Please do take it away.
Oh, I need to unmute. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for that, Jabu. Good to be part of another compact session as one of our cousins, I suppose. So very good to be here. As mentioned, I'm with the Human Sciences Research Council. For interest, we are very actively involved in the data gathering related to the IEC's work. So a lot of the data that the IEC is working with, my colleagues are very involved in producing. But I'm going to be speaking to something slightly different, which is a slightly more applied work that we're involved in with municipalities around the country. I'm eating into interactive time, so I'm going to jump straight into it and go through things quite quickly. Just to say that this is the project that we're currently running is part of a wider portfolio of initiatives that we're involved in the broader civic technology, e-government space. So this one is very focused on implementing pilot projects around e-participation under an EU-funded and DSTI initiative. Ultimately, we're looking to see what municipalities are doing primarily from the perspective of the municipal officials involved in IDPs, public participation, and to understand how they've been working with technology, and to see where we can support some additional work and improvements on what they're doing, working with them to kind of co-design projects and identify technologies that could work with them. So I'm not going to go into this much, but really just to say our focus is very much on this kind of middle space of the participation spectrum. So not very political, not on the political end and not on the service delivery end, much more on the policy making, planning side of things. So that's your IDPs, your planning, your bylaw reviews, those kinds of things, and seeing how we can support public and more meaningful and wider public engagement with those processes, which sounds very similar to what a lot of others are focusing on. We work and we draw on insights and expertise from a range of spaces, both from within the municipalities, but also internationally and from the local kind of tech innovation community. I suppose the starting point, just to say, is that municipalities are often doing quite a lot themselves already. So many are quite active on Facebook in different ways. Facebook and Twitter, X and others in different ways. They have their own platforms in some cases for supporting digital engagement with some of their processes. And it varies, of course. And one of the main things, I suppose, is that quite a lot of the engagement municipalities have is naturally related to service delivery and resolving service delivery issues. But of course, in terms of this project, we're looking more towards how our residents can be more actively involved in planning policy-related processes. So just to speak to some of the pilots, a few of these examples, as I mentioned, we're working in roughly 8 municipalities, a mixture of metros and non-metros. And we're looking really at the transition from a lot of what they currently do in terms of public participation and the use of technology. So currently, it's a lot of using websites to publish quite large policy planning documents like your IDPs, which run between 500 and 1,000 pages, as well as lots of supporting material. So your budget, CapEx, OpEx tables, those kinds of things, which can run into the thousands of pages. Of course, a lot of that material is quite static. The process is usually a kind of a one-way process and quite opaque, so people don't know what happens to any comments that they might submit online or via Izimbizo processes, those kinds of things. And often it's, of course, done in English and inputs are usually via written submissions, or if you're participating in one of the Izimbizo or town hall meetings, you're making a verbal input that gets recorded. So what we're looking to do is to transition more to accessible, especially mobile-first, lower-cost solutions, and lower cost both in terms of residents using them, but also municipalities themselves who are really not in a position to invest large amounts of money in platforms and technology and in skills to support those platforms, which then makes them very dependent on consultants and unsustainable solutions. And then also trying to target the content a lot more, so really slicing it and focusing on specific areas. In most of what we're working on, we're focusing more on ward priorities and ward priority reprioritization and CapEx projects as an entry point because they're quite accessible. Of course, more interactive forms of engagement, maps, data infographics, etc. Much more transparent processes, ideally. So I'll show you an example in a moment where people can at least see what comments are being recorded and potentially to also interact with each other online through those processes. Also to see technology being more integrated into the actual in-person processes. So not to see it as disconnecting people from what are important community-based processes, but rather to see it as a complement, and that's something that can be integrated. So we have done a little bit of work around that in terms of looking at how technology can be pulled into an ABCD process, for example. So just to touch on a couple of examples, the one that's been on the screen is one that we recently launched with eThekwini municipality. You can find it yourself. It's on the social media channels. It's being shared on their social media channels. So if you're based in the municipality, you may be interested in connecting with it. It's a WhatsApp-based channel for accessing information around the current IDP review process and registering for updates, and also submitting comments. So that you are welcome to have a look at. I'll put some links in the chat in a moment to connect directly to these. This is in Rustenburg, local municipality. We started some initial testing last year with these infographic type experiences or tools, really low cost, easy to implement. A lot of young people are actually using them a lot. So DJs, teenagers, for doing invites for parties. So we're just reusing the same tools and adding some project-related information from IDPs, etc., that are then interactive, and you can access the material online. And then in that case, we're also shifting. With Rustenburg, we're moving also to more of a map-based dashboard for commenting on projects specifically, as a way to kind of direct the comments into more tangible areas that are impacting people's lives from a planning perspective. And then the third one is just with the City of Joburg, also active, I think running until the 12th of May. This is more of an end-to-end management platform. So it's also implemented and actually happens to be the same platform being used in the City of Cape Town, which we've also been working with. And this one, fairly straightforward in terms of accessing information, making inputs, but it does also, and there are many other features that, for example, go into the participatory budgeting space. But for now, we're starting off with some fairly straightforward elements just to test those and see how this works. One of the I suppose more distinguishing elements is that you can see comments that are being made by other residents. So the aim is to be more transparent around what's happening with the engagement process. So people don't just see their comments disappearing into the system and then not knowing what's happening with them. I think so. Those just to cover some of the pilots we're working with and some of I suppose the ideas or principles we're trying to work with. Another area that we work in that's actually not directly connected to this project, but has some overlaps, is the broader civic tech space, which I think has some strong kind of youth-centric elements to it. Just because they tend to be there's a wider ecosystem of innovators that are working in the space, more closer to what young people are really working with. So I think some kind of distinguishing characteristics here are that, in contrast to what we're working with, even and what the municipalities do, and what we're working with, even in the pilot projects, which tend to be more top-down around informing and consulting. These are much more bottom-up, petition-driven, campaign-driven initiatives. Whilst we are traditionally, the municipalities and ourselves are often working with quite strict interaction boundaries and timelines. These are much more open and social spaces. They also tend to be more friendly and colloquial. So if you look at the way the messaging is framed in a lot of the material, it's much more engaging and friendly in general. Of course, the municipality is also working at quite regular legislated periods of the year. So engagement is often constrained to those specific periods, whereas a lot of the demand and a lot of the work that others are doing is much more fluid, much more topic-oriented, audience-focused, and issue-focused. So it's really responding to issues as they emerge and as people see them as important, rather than just your regular routines, which tend to become quite habitually tedious, I could say. And then, of course, working with multiple other channels and formats and partners. And the last point is just to say that whereas a lot of how the municipalities work and how even with the pilots to some extent have been working, is that it's a lot around, from a technology perspective, building and delivering a technology. The kind of civic tech and youth-centric community is much more about building a tech ecosystem that includes supporting skills development around a community, diversity, and looking at the diversity of roles. So I think Sipilele commented on that earlier, which I think is a critical point, is that we need to look at the roles that young people play within their communities more carefully, and to understand how they are kind of informing that and supporting that system of information sharing. Just to comment on a few kind of highlights, or I suppose concluding questions or comments, where we think we can draw from that kind of civic tech space more into what we are doing around pilot projects, but also perhaps relevant to municipalities more generally. So a lot of that is about this kind of openness. Of course, there's opportunities to explore many more uses of technology, but also to look at how the messaging and content is addressed. There are related points that then need to, as the more you open up and the more you allow for that more fluid interaction, you need to start addressing things around potential harms and safety. And that's not necessarily difficult to address. It just, there needs to be work done around, for example, moderation, both guidelines, codes of conduct, skills needed for that, as well as the technology-related aspects. For example, municipalities are often shutting down their Facebook commenting because they don't want to see abusive or complaint-related comments, but that can be managed from a technology perspective. Also understanding how we can interface with more bottom-up driven processes, so where petitions are maybe being developed. There are processes within provincial legislatures and in municipalities to support that, but also thinking about how that can all be managed and potentially supported from a technology perspective. And then this kind of goes to what Sipilele was saying earlier, and something that I mentioned in terms of understanding those young intermediaries that were working within communities, so your community journalists, junior councils, SRCs, civic developers, but also looking internally within the municipalities for those champions of the use of technology and I suppose novel ways of working. And often it's your designers. I often and regularly meet young people that are aspiring data scientists or developers within the municipalities, public participation officers that are working on the ground that are keen to work with tools like this. And then ultimately to involve them much more in the upstream development and design of technology and how it's used and how the processes work. We've been doing a bit more of that as part of the project. So we've had hackathons as part of the kind of design process with different municipalities. We do community media, data journalism training, which is always very engaging, very interesting as young people get to work with data, understand how it can be used in civic engagement work. And there's interesting initiatives done internationally in the EU and other areas around just equipping young people within the municipalities and externally on how to, for example, moderate online conversations in a trustworthy, transparent way. So there's lots of interesting opportunities to invest there. So I'll stop there, and hopefully there's some time to talk more. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Really appreciative of the presentation. Leveraging digital technologies to enhance public participation, particularly for the youth. Also, thank you to all of the participants and also particularly the panelists. So we now have a bit of time for questions and, open discussions. So I encourage everyone to participate, and this is how we would like to structure the session. To ask a question, you just have to use your, raise your hand rather, or you can put the question on the chat, and then I would choose, the name of the person or shout the name, and then the person will get to ask their question. So if there's any suggestion you have or question, please feel free to participate. Um, please do. I'm not restricting anyone. So if anyone has a question, please go ahead. Thank you. So it could be a question also and a comment on some of the things that you've heard from the presentation. It could be directed to anyone who's part of the panel. So it might not be directed to the presentation itself, but to the person who was opening the discussion. So feel free to participate. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Maybe you can start with the questions that are already on the chats because there's quite a few questions there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mamwini. I will try to look at them. It's very difficult at this point, but so let me just, if there's anyone who can help me on the
Well,
comms
Tabu,
side,
can I
please do,
ask
Consilia.
one that I already see, and I think it's directed to our presentation,
Right.
the one by Nomu Sangwenya, which says, did the research identify barriers? Oh my goodness. Okay, it says, did the research identify barriers or challenges hindering municipalities to conducting meaningful youth engagements just to ensure a balanced view from both ends? So I will also just take an attempt at this, and knowing that you also a part of it, you can come if you have any additions. So to answer Nomusa's question, I would say the methodology that we adopted had given us an allowance to speak or incorporate all the voices that are involved in local governance, including the municipalities themselves, as I've indicated in my presentation, the communities, as well as the civic organizations. So that is how we were trying to get a balanced view. And from the interviews, what we could get from other municipalities, what they put forward was that one barrier that hinders meaningful youth engagement or meaningful youth participation. One was that they mentioned was along the lines of resources or resource constraints, which could be financial or could even be in a sense of capacity. And I think we didn't really delve deep into this because the youth participation came as a finding itself. So we just managed to get answers at a certain level. And we think us being here today was to also explore more, to get their views as to if we are envisioning that we can enhance youth participation, what could also be the challenges as well as the opportunities. So I think I'll leave it at this and then ask Jabu to add if you have anything to add on this question. And then if you can't still see the questions, then I'll read the others for you.
Right. Thank you very much, Consilia. I will not, unfortunately, respond to that, but I'll just move to the hands that have been in the chat. So I would like to go to Zugisa if she is there to ask a question or comment. Zugisa, please, floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
I'm Zugisa though.
Oh, yes, Zugisa, please, we'll come back to you. Please, Zugisa, continue.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am Zugisa Ghana, a councillor at KSD Municipality, MMC for Finance in the municipality. I am also the interim provincial youth commissioner of Salga in the Eastern Cape and part of the national steering committee of the Salga Youth Commission. For me, I will just have a broad comment which I would love that the panelists take into consideration on some of the observations that we are making, which I think the bulk of the presentations here, to a greater extent, seem to support some of the observations that we have made. That youth integration or mainstreaming of youth development, or a youth-centered developmental local government, how these interventions, or probably where these interventions are located within structures, either of or particularly of organized local government, such as SALGA and the South African Cities Network, and also where these functions are located even within municipalities themselves, also determines a lot of the extent to which youth integration can be achieved across the key performance areas of local government, therefore creating a holistic enabling an environment and integration. If I were to be much more specific, if we take the example of the South African Cities Network, the youth integration work would be largely only in the portfolio that is responsible for inclusive communities. Now, you are most bound in that situation to find it difficult to integrate this discussion in the municipal finance and fiscal policy framework of municipalities. What is the consideration that is given from a budgeting point of view to enable youth integration, but also what is the participation of young people in municipal frameworks and determination of the fiscal policy frameworks, as it were. And when we discuss other matters such as institutional transformation of municipalities, what is the institutional capacity arrangement that should and could be made by municipalities and different spheres of government in order to ensure that there is sufficient institutional capacity to respond to the fact that 61% of the population of the country is youth, and therefore more efforts should be made to ensure that we have sufficient institutional capacity to plan, budget, and perform in a manner that is youth-centered. So, what are those institutional capacity considerations that are there? And for instance, if you look at the first presentation that was done by the institute, I think it was Angel Flickard. I just forgot the name. My apologies for that. But if you look at what they are oversight frameworks they are doing in engaging civil society and young and youth community organizations. My sense would be that even before, and I'm not saying in a gradual manner, these could be done parallel to each other, engaging youth organizations and young people in general, but also engaging those who are currently serving in municipal councils and in other legislatures, such as the
Sorry,
provincial.
sorry, Speaker. Just bit of time to just give to others. If you have one sentence so that at least we can, the respondents can come back to you, please, Sugis. Are you still there?
I have been muted in this platform, and
Yes. Just a final, if it's a question, and then we'll be able to respond so that we can give to the other participants, Dazugiso, please. Thank you.
the good approach, Chair, that's normally appropriate with dealing with discussions is to indicate how much time a person has before they start speaking.
Right.
It's normally very rude when a person is already speaking, you then indicate time. When I was not
Apologies for that. You
what
have 30
time I have.
seconds to just wrap
No,
up
it's
so that
fine.
at least you can
Fi-
give
it's
to
fine, Chair.
others.
I think if anyone has heard the point I was
Right.
making, whilst I've not completed it, it's fine.
All right. Thank you very much, Yes. Yabonga. If you have time, you can also put it on the chat. Please, I'll move to the All-Southern Youth Council. Please, well, if you have time, please keep it short so that at least you can give it to other people. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Miss Winnie. Hi, Miss Consilia. Hi, Jago.
Bye.
Sorry. Just an observational remark and then a question. I'm a member of the Ward Committee, Ward 9 of Oudtshoorn Local Municipality, and I'm also a member of the Greater Oudtshoorn Youth Council. From my experience with youth participating in ward committees, it's not really a significant percentage of ward committee members who are from the youth. Like from what I've seen, there's only like one or two from every ward, so less than 10% or 10%. Um, and from my own experience as a ward committee member in our meetings, um, even though like official policy says that there must be a youth representative or voice of the youth there, during the meetings, from my own experience, there have been times where I've been pressurized to come to agreement about some of the decisions that other ward committee members said should happen in the community. Like I said that we have to use this specific plan. However, other ward committee members said that we should go. And since they are all the ones other observational remark, when the ward committees were established, I've noticed that a lot of the ward committee members are not really people from different organizations or such. Like I've noticed in my ward committee, like there's a lot of people who are from a specific party. I won't say names. It is not just in my ward. A lot of the wards is like similar events or similar situations. Um, so that has been my experience that even though you are a young person who's in the ward committees participating, um, there's pressure from other people who tell you like you should do this and do that, even though you know yourself as a young person, this will not come to the benefit of you. Understand? So that actually comes to my other question. That comes to my question. If we not if we do increase the amount of youth participation in ward committees, in oversight, etc., or taking part in democratic elections. Um, how are we going to ensure that those young people actually represent and speak for themselves as a youth? Okay, because there might be situations where the young person or young people they are elected, they get into certain positions. However, they're not there to represent the voices of the young people in their communities. They're there to represent certain vested interests who see this young person who knows there has to be like a quota of young people. So they pressurize this young person, these young people to be in the positions, however, to the benefit of the more established individuals in our communities. So how can we, if we do have more youth representation, participation rather, how will we actually know that this young person or young people actually speak for themselves and not for others? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Anwar. I will just take 4 questions at the same time so that at least we can come back to engaging with some of the questions that you've pointed. And granted the comment, which was a good one, I would like to go to, I think your hand was raised, if I'm not mistaken, Nonhlanhla. I'm not sure if you're still there. If you're not, we can move to Goodman Kwanazi, if Nonhlanhla is not there.
Greetings, colleagues. I'm Goodman Mkwanazi, Manager Youth and Sport Development at Umtubatuba in KZN. Chair, I don't think I have a big question, or it's just a suggestion. The first one, I wanted to appreciate the session. And the suggestion is that if you can be, as officials, if you can be asked maybe to bring like 5 youth representative to these sessions, I think it can be more effective to get young people to listen to this presentation, because they can go in their groups, in their respective wards, just to talk to young people to participate in all processes like IDP, like they were saying here. Last one, Chair, we are planning the Freedom Day with IEC. I don't know who from our presenters that can maybe help us, whether to present virtually or to help us to do this, because we wanted to get youth to participate in democratic processes, like register to vote, go to vote, and attending the municipal program, like you were saying. I'm now in the IDP session in one of the wards around Mdubatuba. So we need to get young people to participate in these processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tamkonazi. It's a really great suggestion and a good question, and I'm pretty sure some of the panels have pointed it or have written it down. I will take Uzamajosi and Vugile as the last hands, and then I'll go to the chat. Please, Zama, the question, please, or your suggestion, rather.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I was actually going to type, but I've gotten the opportunity to speak, so I'll go ahead. So my name is Amachos Sitole, and I'm very involved in youth spaces and youth development, um, specifically youth participation and child participation as well. So what I wanted to share on the chat was that I think one of the ways in which we can improve youth participation is through existing platforms. So, like some provinces or municipalities do have junior councils or junior parliaments. Those platforms need to be strengthened. They need
Yes.
to be strengthened, and there needs to be capacity building and all of that in order for these young people that are in these spaces can work in a more impactful or meaningful way. And yeah, there just needs to be some type of structure and yeah, some type of structure in terms of these different platforms. And also the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we do have, like, you know, your ORCs, which is the Office of on the Rights of Children. You in Cape Town, they got the Children's Commissioner. There's all of these different existing platforms that we just need to review and strengthen and see where the gaps are in order for them to be utilized in a more impactful way for young people. And also, like, you know, from like things like how are these young people selected into these platforms, those things need to be reviewed. I remember in Johannesburg there was a huge commotion because the junior council or junior parliament there was made up of young people from private schools, and people were like,
Mhm.
why is it only children from private schools? What's going on? How are they selected? So looking at all of those things, reviewing the selection of these children in these junior councils, looking at how are they capacitated in order to impact the policies that are made, and in order for them to represent their constituency properly. That all needs to be sorted out, and yeah, and I feel like governments or whoever's in charge of these councils, they need to think deeper in how we can make these things work, because there are existing platforms and they're just not functioning properly, and that needs to be reviewed. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Zama. Much appreciated insights. Vogile, and then we'll try and answer the questions, and then we'll move on to the chat just to see what questions are there. So, Vogile, you'll be the last time, unfortunately, and then we'll move to the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am Vukile Wali from Makana Municipality. I am the Special Program Manager. I just want to align myself with the latter speaker on issues of supporting the youth programs and just supporting them and encourage youth to take a lead on their own programs. I love the stance that the people with disabilities are always taking when they are saying nothing for us without us. If youth can take that stance to say nothing for them without them, because if you look at the presentations, particularly on issue of population and numbers, you will find that youth are the majority. So we don't have a choice but to have programs that will be speaking to youth development, youth programs, and we just support them. I wanted also, Chair, to appreciate the session, also joining to the tune that is saying we ought to also involve our youth councils, because here in Makana, for instance, we've got a youth council where youth issues are being expressed, if they might also explore this particular platform so that they get exposure, they share experiences. I wanted to just to commend you, Chair, and the team for this particular platform. It's long overdue, so that we share experiences, because we are all working with youth programs, and we just to have a commonality in terms of what are we doing in terms of trying to bring back our youth into serious programs. I wanted just to appreciate the presentations, Chair. The presenters were so eloquent. They prepared for this meeting. Yeah, thank you very much to them too. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Vukile. And it's very unfortunate that some of the speakers had to leave, because we anticipated the meeting or the engagement to last only at one. So some of the questions you've asked will not be able to engage with. Kodwa, the first one by Anwar was, he asked that, given that we are anticipating or would like to see an increase in the representation of the youth, what happens in the event where the youth are there in numbers, but their voices are not heard because there's hindrances? So I don't know if that's something that can be tackled as a question, or someone can respond to that, or I obviously wouldn't want to respond to that, as I would want to give the space to to the speakers. So another question was really about which since Goodman Mkwana really spoke about them using, you know, the virtual tools to look at to do Freedom Days celebration. I think that's answered itself. Of course, if you want to engage with the youth, you would have to use those tools. So that's just one question that we'll tackle, and then I'm not sure if you can permit me to, you know, to just have that one question that it's answered, and then we'll be able to move forward and close the session. I'm not sure if you're comfortable with that, or you would want to continue. Please, with the thumb of hands, we just have one question and a suggestion, and then we close. Is that okay with everyone? Or right?
Sorry, Chair, Spelele's hand is up. I think she
Is up.
might want to respond to some of the questions.
Right. Spelele, please. I can't see. I'm just moving my computer around. Please.
All right. Thank you so
respond
much,
to that.
Maywini.
Thank you.
I thought I would just come in with my deep apologies because I have a hard stop of 1:15. I already committed to another meeting that started at 1. I have 1 minute, so I thought I would say my goodbyes, share my apologies, but also maybe try to address some of what that other question was around, what happens when youth are in the majority, but their voice is not heard? What should then happen? I think it's a question that just relates to power dynamics in the world that we live in. We know that, people can exist in numbers but not have their voices amplified. This applies to most vulnerable groupings, children, women, and indeed young people. I think what we can do is try to effect change from whatever space we're in. So ourselves, for example, as an organization that facilitates learning and exchange, we analyze, we gather intelligence about urban development. What we can do within our space, of course, is that policy advocacy. It's that translation of policies to practice, where we say we've got an integrated urban development framework. It speaks to active and engaged communities. It speaks to co-creation and shared governance, and that government can't govern alone, but must do so through participatory processes. What it brings it, how do you bring that into expression? It doesn't have to be big, scalable projects. It can be small interventions, small pieces of research that really build our capacity to be better at applying the right lessons, asking the right questions as well, that are context driven, and generating the practices that really resonate with our South African context, really about homegrown solutions as well. And with that, I'd like to thank you and say my goodbyes. And thank you so much for having me on this platform, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And hopefully, Anwar, you sorted with that. And seeing that, because of time and also having so many questions and comments on the Q&A box there, we would say that, if permissible, we'd like to collect all the questions and suggestions. And then when we're given time to sort of respond to them, because unfortunately, we can't take any hands and questions at the moment. And as we come to the end of our webinar, I would like to say, thank you for all of the speakers and panelists and the participants for all the valuable contributions that they've made. And, of course, I'm not going to give a very big, speech because I don't have anything. But I would like to just invite Stembi Limbete, who is the ED of PARI, the Public Affairs Research Institute, to deliver the closing remarks. So, Tembile, if you're there, somewhere there, I can't see you, but if you're there, please, over to you. Thank you.
I am here, Jabu. I just wanted to check if Paul or Concelia wanted to just say anything in comment in response to any of the questions that had been asked before I close.
No problem. Please, if they have, apologies for those who are not given the platform.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Dr. Stembile. I think I'll just say one thing in response to one of the questions. It's just a suggestion from a research perspective and advocacy view. I think maybe taking the route to formalize or get a policy recognition for youth councils could go a long way by integrating youth councils into municipal frameworks through formal or bylaws or council resolutions, as well as trying to align their functions with Chapter 4 of the Municipal Systems Act, which mandates that public participation should take place and should include youth inputs and make this a requirement in municipal planning and decision making, as well as your budgeting processes. Yeah, that's my 2 cents. And another way to maybe make sure that the youth councils are recognized and maybe are put at the forefront to amplify the voices of the youth in the municipalities could be somehow maybe through developing let's say, terms of references that outline the purpose, the roles, the composition, the responsibilities of the youth council, and then position these youth councils as consultative bodies on youth-related matters, giving structured input into municipal decisions. I think this answers the questions that came in the the Autumn Youth Council's presentation, as well as other voices that I've picked along the journey of the conversation for today. And then Jabu, not to stretch you, I think there's also a comment that is worth maybe voicing out as well, that says, let me just read it for us, that says youth participation should go beyond symbolic inclusion or awareness campaigns. It must be rooted in meaningful engagement that responds to the real needs of the young people, especially regarding socioeconomic challenges. And the person that wrote it, I think it's Miss Ngwenya, who was saying she appreciated the Autumn Youth Council's emphasis on the outcomes-based programs, which is a model that encourages youth participation to lead to tangible benefits, not just amplified voices. That currently many mechanisms still reflect the tokenistic participation approach, where youth are heard but not necessarily acted upon. So for participation to be impactful, we must develop programs with clear outcomes that demonstrate the value of youth contributions. And she went on to say, without this shift, young people will remain disillusioned and feel their involvement serves others' agendas, as it was already highlighted by other presentations today, rather than the development of the youth. I thank you.
Chair, if I can just then comment very quickly, there are two things that stuck out. The one, I think Concelia has also reiterated what Zamajosi was speaking to about, strengthening structures that should be playing a more active role. The other is just from an outcomes-driven perspective. I think that's where the technology can play a role in supporting kind of the tracking or the tracing of comments and inputs or submissions from a youth perspective, and how those and over time translate into specific outcomes. And I think that's a demand across the board, but it's something we would hope to see that technology can play a supporting role in providing some transparency around that. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. Tembile, still there?
Yes, I am still here. And thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you to everybody that joined this webinar on behalf of PARI. It's been so enriching and enlightening. I spent yesterday with the electoral reform panel that has been looking and that it's been mandated to relook at the electoral system. And something that came out very powerfully in the discussions yesterday was that there were no young people in the room. I think it was about 100 people in the room. Only 7 people were born after 1997. And I think that was a serious indictment on everybody who'd been part of the organizing. But I think indicative that although the majority of South Africans are under the age of 40, I think it's like 70% of South Africans are under the age of 40. The environment is still so exclusionary if involving young people in discussion around the way that we are governed in making decisions and ensuring accountability and a thriving democracy. So thank you so much to my colleagues at Compact, to our partners at SELGA, at HSRC, Integrity Action, and all the speakers who were speaking on the panel today, for really putting this issue of youth participation in governance processes, not just at the local level, but also at the provincial and the national level, on the agenda. And I think I'm very confident that this is work that we will continue to be driving as PARI, and work that we will want to reach out to all of you to continue on. I'd like to thank all of the panel, all the participants on the webinar, to everybody that asked such engaging questions. I've been just watching all the engagement on the chat, in the Q&A, and all the people that wanted to engage on this topic. And I think that's just indicative of the need for more such conversations, and actually to be able to turn these conversations into action that changes the landscape of youth involvement and youth participation in governance in South Africa. Thank you for indulging us by staying online for an extra 30 minutes. I'd like to thank Jabu for your very able program direction in this webinar, and all of the colleagues that were involved in organizing it and setting up the Zoom and everything. And we really look forward to having another discussion on this issue of youth participation, and to take some of these ideas. And I think there were some great practicable ideas and initiatives that were brought out in the discussion. I look forward to taking some of these forward, and meeting again, hopefully having an in-person engagement next time, in order to see how we take some of this forward. So thank you very much, colleagues, and wishing you all a really wonderful afternoon.